finally, if things are going well, the franchisor, in many cases, will have an in-person discovery day. It's the final stage where you'll get to meet with other people looking at the brand, the C-suite, the founders, and everyone else. And usually, if you've made it that far and you get the invite, there's a good chance of getting approved for the franchise. Remember, it's not just about can I afford it. You need to get approved, and typically they're going to be in person. Some will offer a virtual option, or just virtually, and some will offer both. On a rare case, I've seen this where the CEOs and founders are going to be a lot more involved on those Zoom calls, and they may not even they may just bypass the discovery date because they're going to be a lot more active. Instead of just jumping on one call, maybe they're on every other 2 or 3 calls, and they're putting together feedback and things like that. And if they do feel during the process it's not a good fit, bringing it up sooner than later than dragging on the process. That's a part of responsible franchising, is being very clear on who's the right fit. And so some may not even do the discovery day at all. That's a smaller percentage, but I've been seeing more and more companies doing that because the founders and CEOs are much more present and involved early stage, or I should say throughout the process. And that's kind of discovery. Usually after that, what happens is that you're going to be essentially getting an award letter. Obviously, they want to make sure nothing has changed significantly, like a partner leaving or huge change financially. But you'll get an award letter stating that you have been approved, the number of territories, the number of locations, and things like that. And then given kind of a length of time to make that final decision. So going back to brands, so we talked about intro the brands. You don't know what you don't know, and you're going to learn a lot on these calls. We typically recommend looking at 3 companies at a time that all kind of compare and contrast from one another. And that way you can look at a B2B, a B2C type of business. Maybe one of them is brick and mortar, so you can understand all the differences. And sometimes on occasion, there's a change to the franchise model. Step 4 is constantly continuing our conversations and reviewing brands, going back to the franchise model, and sometimes reiterating. Remember, we talked about some people, they hear of a new brand, sexy brand that they just heard. And then they say, well, can we add that to the mix? And we can always add and remove brands to the mix, but we always go back to the model and say, well, this specific brand itself, although it's something that an industry that you have a little bit more familiarity within, but it does require a lot more employees, and you wanted to keep the headcount under 5. So we always revisit that to see if it makes sense or not. Or the most popular is a new brand and want to add them to the mix. And I always take a step back and say, well, this particular brand may require you to be full-time in the business. If that's not in the cards, there's no reason to really look at that brand unless that opportunity comes up. So to leave the company sooner than later. So going back, step 4, we're constantly reviewing brands, getting feedback. I always recommend a Word document, a Google Sheet, whatever it is. Each brand, list your questions, list your concerns. At the end of the day, we're looking for the brand that really stand out of the 3, and just taking note and giving the brands a chance to present and bringing up your questions and concerns. Sometimes they're all great fits, or in many cases, like myself, the brand that I wasn't as interested in ended up being the brand that I ended up moving forward with. Again, going back to that 2-page model that we sent to you, reviewing those brands and doing our weekly calls, because sometimes I've had people say, I'm really confused, not sure what to do. And we talk it out, and it's really simple sometimes in many cases for me to see, hey, these are the standouts. Maybe these are some follow-up questions, but we'll go through reviewing some of the questions you should be asking, reminding on due diligence. I see a lot of this where franchisees get really excited and forget to, or only speak with one existing franchise owner. You want to spend time there. You want to talk to the people that are running their businesses. What are their pain points? What are ways to kind of simplify things? What are their recommendations and things like that? Those are areas I would spend a lot of time on and not skip.